Hi, this is Sean. The purpose of this video is to get you up and flying as quickly as possible with your BETA75 and a QX7 or X9D. What we're going to start with first is our QX7. First thing we'll need to do is set up our radio. On the QX7, what you'll do is push the menu button one time. It's the middle button here. Above that is the page button. What we'll do is we'll hit the page button one time. Now we're on page 2. With the right scroll wheel, we're going to scroll to the left, which will go up in the menu. And we're going to scroll up until we're at mode D16 is what we want to make sure it's set to. And channel range is set from channel 1 to channel 8. If this is on 16, just use your scroll wheel and adjust this down to its channel 8. The next thing we'll want to do is set the radio failsafe by scrolling down, and this one I already have on no pulse, but when you turn on your radio, you will probably see not set. What we'll want to do is with the scroll wheel change this till we're set at no pulses. With no pulses, what this will do is if I turn off my radio, the quadcopter motors will just stop, or this also while you're flying, if you're flying too far away, the quadcopter will just stop the motor from spinning and not cause any flyaways. The next thing we'll want to do is scroll up to bind B and D, push the enter button. We have a menu here. We want to choose 1 through 8 telemetry on. Hit that, and now we can see the bind button is flashing. We'll set our radio about 3 feet apart from our quad. Taking our BETA75, remove the battery from the holder. And what I like to do is lightly pull on the antennas, which will pull the FrSky XM Plus out. And this enables me to easily get my fingernail on the bind button, which is next to the antennas, and just by pushing that with my fingernail I can feel it click. So in order to make this bind, we'll hold the bind button down, take our battery and insert that while we're holding the bind button. Now I let go of the bind button, and what we want to see is the red light flashing and the green light is solid. What this means now is that it's bound to our QX7. All we need to do now is unpower the quadcopter, bring our radio back, hit the exit button, so the bind button is no longer flashing. Hit the exit button a few times so we're back at the home screen. Now let's double check to see if our quad is bound. Plug the battery back in. And what we want to look for is on the receiver, a solid green light. That tells us that we're bound. Now, if you're too close within the receiver and the radio, what will occur sometimes is they'll go into the null of the radio where it's not going to have any signal. And I'm trying to simulate this now. And you might see what will happen is this light will go red, meaning there's no signal. If this occurs, just remove our radio 2 or 3 feet from there, and then your light will go green. The next step, leaving our battery plugged in, we'll take our USB cable, and on the bottom of your quadcopter, at the back of it, we have our USB connection. With our micro USB, we'll plug that into the quad, and holding it level on your computer, with BetaFlight open, you'll hit the connect button, and now I'm connected. And what I'm going to do now is rotate the quad right, left, up and down, and what I want to see is on the setup screen the model is following my motions. With this set like this, we are ready now to proceed with our BetaFlight setup with the quad. Okay, now we're going to set up our Taranis X9D with our BETA75. The first thing we're going to do is go in and set up the radio. On the radio, when you first turn your radio on, you'll see Model 1 is already created for us. What we'll do is hit the menu button once, hit the page button once, push the positive button up until we're on mode. We want to make sure we're set to D16. If not, press the enter button and push positive negative till you're on D16. Next, we'll go down to channel range. We want the channel range to be 1 through 8, as I have here. If this is set to D16, just hit the enter button, the 16 flashing, and hit the negative till you're on number 8. The next thing we'll do is go down to failsafe mode, hit the enter button, and change this till we're on no pulse. Your radio may be set to not set, so please change that to no pulse. What this will do is if we turn the radio off while the quad is on, or the quad is to fly outside of range of the radio, the quad will just stop and the motors will stop spinning. Hit the enter button to clear that, and next thing we'll do is go into the binding procedure. So we'll go up to bind, hit the bind button by hitting enter. We want this set 1 through 8, telemetry on, hit enter, and we'll set our radio to the side. Now we take our quadcopter, remove the battery, and what I'd like to do is slightly pull on the receiver so I can easily get to the bind button. And by using my fingernail, I can push on this little bind button next to the antennas on the XM Plus and do some test pushes on that so I can feel it go in. And next thing I'll do is, while I'm holding the bind button down, take my battery, plug the battery in, let go of the bind button, and what I want to see is the red light flashing and the green light on. If the green light is not on and the red light flashing, you need to redo this and make sure you're pushing the bind button down while you're plugging the battery in. Next we'll do is unplug the battery, bring our radio back, hit the exit button to take it out of bind mode. Push the exit a few times. We're back at the home screen. Now what we'll do is take our battery, plug it into the quad, and what I want to look for on my receiver is the light to go green. Now you can see that it's flashing red. Let's move the radio away from the quad, and what we can see now is it's a green solid light. This means we're bound. The reason that red light was on when I first plugged in the battery is because I was too close to the radio, and this is what's called the null, where there's little or no reception coming on the receiver because it's too close to the radio. Now that that is done, I'll take my USB, plug it into the quad, hold it level, and over on BetaFlight we'll hit connect, and I can see that we're connected. Now I'll rotate the quad to the right, to the left, forward and backward, and I see on the setup screen this is occurring. The next thing we'll do is bring our radio back in. Again, keeping an eye that we're in the bind mode. I can see the green light is on the receiver. In the radio, we'll hit the menu button one time. And we're going to go set up our switches. We need to set up an arm switch, and we need to set up a flight mode switch. So what we'll do is we'll hit the page button a number of times until we see the mixer page. On the mixer page, you will already have in a model aileron, elevator, rudder, and throttle. What we want to do is add the switch. So by hitting the negative button until we get down to channel 5, and then hit the enter button. Now, all it is to set up a switch is go to your source, in this case, which is already on S1, hit the negative one time, hit the enter button, that's highlighted. Now, all I need to do is move the switch that I want to assign that to, and this will be my arm switch. In this case, I'm going to use the back left switch because it's a one-way switch. As I did that, you can see the source now changed to SF. Hit the enter button one time. It's not highlighted anymore. And now we will hit the exit button. Now what we'll do is set up our mode switch. On the home screen, what you'll need to do is hit the menu button once, hit the page nut button a number of times until we're on the mixer page. When we're on the mixer page, we'll see 1 through 4 is already set. Aileron, elevator, rudder, and throttle. What we'll want to do is go down to channel 5 by pushing the negative button. Now we're on channel 5, hit the enter button. And we're going to go down to source. This is where we'll set up the switch on. So now I hit the negative button, S1 is highlighted, we'll hit the enter button. So now that it's flashing, all we have to do now is move the switch that we want the source to be, and in this case it's going to be our arm switch. So I'm going to choose the back left switch. By me just moving the switch, you can see the source now changed to the switch I selected, which is SF. Hit the enter button again. This will clear it from there. Now we'll hit the exit button one time, 2 times. We're back at the mixer page. At the mixer page, what we'll do now is hit the negative one time, go down to channel 6. What we're going to do is set up our flight mode switch. We'll hit enter again, negative one time, enter one time. Now S2 is selected, and I'm going to choose my back left switch here, which is SE. I move my SE, and you can see that it assigned it to that source. Hit the enter button again, and we're out of the selection method, and hit the exit button 2 times, bring you back, and you'll see now we have our arm switch on SF and our flight mode switch on SE. You're welcome to use any 3-position switch you want for our flight mode switch. I just happen to use SE most commonly. Now that that is set up, what we'll do now is go into our radio setup within BetaFlight and get it flying. Now that we have the quad set up in our radio, let's move over to BetaFlight and get it set up. Click on the connect button in the upper right corner, and let's see if the quad is following our motions by pitching forward, back, left, and right. That looks good. There's a calibrate accelerometer on the left hand side. We can click on this to make the quad level with the screen, and we'll be using that when we are flying an angle or horizon. So as we do click on that, you'll see the quad level out. Make sure it's on a level table or something at that time, and now you can see that it's level. Now let's move on to the ports tab. As you can see, they have the USB VCP setup and the receiver setup on UART1. TBS Smart Audio has also been already set up. Everything's good there. Let's move on to the configuration tab. On the configuration tab, you can see D-Shot 300 has been chosen, and our CPU load is pretty low here, so at this present time, let's just leave it set on that. 8000 PID loop has been chosen, and that is good to go. We want to make sure our receiver is set on serial based receiver, S-bus for FrSky. That's already set. These other parameters are preset for most commonly used setups, but you're welcome to look into these and make those changes as you want. And what we'll do is now move on to the power and battery tab. On this page, there's nothing that needs to be changed on the Beta 75. Let's take a look at the PID tuning tab. So on the PID tuning tab, we have our RC rates, defaultly at 1.00. This we'll probably want to bring down a little bit so that our roll rate is not as aggressive. So we'll lower that down to 0.70, and we'll also change our yaw rate to 0.70. You're welcome to change this to whatever setting you'd like. I'm also going to add some RC expo. Defaultly there's none there, but by adding some expo, this will make the movement of the sticks a little more smooth. And again, you're welcome to change this to your liking. As you can see in the curve here, it's going to make it nice and smooth instead of being a linear. And now that we've made those changes, we'll just come down and hit the save button. Receiver tab. On the receiver tab, what we want to do is move our sticks so that we can see that our axes are moving along with our gimbals. So by moving our throttle stick forward and backward, we'll see that that responds appropriately. Yaw left and right, that's working according to our sticks. Pitch back and forward, and that's responding accordingly. And then we have our right stick or roll left and right. Since we've set up our arm switch and our flight mode, you can see that it appears on aux 1 and 2. If these were not matching with our stick commands, we can do is go to this channel map and go to one of the other presettings like Spectrum, Graupner, JR. And by selecting that, it's going to change our map to TAER1234, and then you'd want to hit save to see if that matches. If so, proceed. You can see our aux 12 is moving up and down. That's our RSSI. That's set up in the top right hand corner under the RSSI. So as I'm moving my sticks around left and right, forward and backward, I'm just looking here to see that our preview is matching what my commands are doing, because this is what will be occurring in flight. With all that set, we'll hit the save. Now let's move to the Modes tab. On the Modes tab, we can see at the top here we have aux 1 already preset to our channel 5, which is going to allow us to arm the motors. Now with the cursor outside in the gray area here, we have it, you can see that it's going to be disarmed. But if I move my arm switch, you'll see it move over into the 2000 area, and this will allow the motors to spin once we're disconnected from BetaFlight. Now you're welcome to move these sliders around so that the arming is within range of where your position is when you move your cursor to the other end, and this will allow the flight controller to know when it is safe to arm your motors. On our angle and horizon, they already have it preset so that our mode angle is in the middle position and horizon is in the third position. As of right now, as you can see, the cursors are in the gray area, and this will allow it to fly in an acro or manual mode. And when we move our switch to position 2 or 3, you can see that the orange area on angle pops up, or horizon will pop up when we're in that area. At any time, you're welcome to move these to other positions. So if you wanted angle and position 1, you would move both sliders over into that window of which the cursor is sitting. here on the Motors tab, we have our motors assigned to these positions so that at any time on this tab we are enabled to make them run manually. So by moving this cursor over, this is saying that you'll understand that it's safe to spin the motors. And if we want, we can move any one of these individually, or by moving the master up and down, we're allowing all 4 motors to spin up at the same time. Here I'll demonstrate sliding just one of the motors up or down with the mouse. We can also, by clicking on the motor tab with our mouse, then using the arrows on the keyboard, you can slowly raise or lower the motor settings. When we're done here, we'll disable that by turning that off and proceed to the OSD tab. On the OSD tab, we have the presettings from BETA75, and they have chosen probably some of the most commonly used settings that we use with the multi-rotor. And by looking at all of the tabs here, and the ones in orange, they are the ones that will be turned on at the present time. And as you move your cursor over one, you'll see a window pop up explaining what that will do. And by turning it off, we're able to see it disappear from the screen, or by turning it on, we can see it appear over on the right. Once we have found that on the screen, by turning it on, you're able to click on that item and actually drag that around on the screen to your liking. The screen is set up sort of in a grid pattern, so you'll see that there will be certain locations that it will lock into. Here I'm moving the RSSI value up into the top corner and dragging that back down. Also, by hovering over the icons, they are going to show up on the left by kind of being highlighted. Here I'm demonstrating the logo being turned on and off. After we're done with these changes, we make sure we hit the save button so that those are saved. On the font manager in the bottom right hand corner, you can see what the font that's preset to and what it would look like. But you're able to upload other fonts here from the web, or using these default settings like bold, large, extra large, BetaFlight, digital clarity, and vision. We can use one of the preset ones like vision here. You can see the font is changed, and by clicking the upload font, it will upload this font now to our flight controller, and in a moment here you'll see the fonts change on our display. When we're done with that, make sure we hit the save button. Next, let's move on to the LED tab. The LED tab is preset from BetaFPV with the 4 LEDs on the back of the quad and set up here on the LED strip with certain colors already preset and modes selected. So by selecting on the LED, we're able to see what function it's preset to, and by choosing one of the colors, you're able to change the colors. Now let's take a look at the CLI command. In the CLI command, this is where we would enter in codes and different commands to see what's needed or what is possibly going on internally on the board. By typing in version, an example, we can then see that the firmware on this flight controller is set to 3.5.0. This is very helpful at times when you're wondering what version is on the board at the present time. Make sure when we've made these changes to any settings in CLI, we type save before we exit, otherwise they're not saved. And when we're all done with this, we'll just hit the disconnect button and then take it for a flight.